everyone. This is Gilbert Jalad. I'm talking to you here from Private Corporate Counsel downtown Orlando, sponsoring Tufts On Tax, where all your tax questions and answers are right here with Mr. T. Scott Tufts. When it comes to taxes, he is the master and the expert on this matter. Hello, Scott. How are you today?
Hey, good to be with you.
Good to be with you too. And today we have an interesting subject that we haven't, maybe tackled a little bit before, but tax returns in litigation. What is that all about?
All right. So what we're trying to do here is get our audience to understand that taxes can come up in a non-tax case, but it's critical to even knowing if you're in the right court. Okay?
Okay. So
this idea that taxes don't matter, not true. We've established that on this show. Mm-hmm. The idea that taxes, the 8082 and litigation and partnerships blowing up, we've talked about K1's and how that can come up in litigation. Mm-hmm. Then we talked about how the operating agreements of an LLC can be part of litigation if you don't have one, and so forth and so on.
Correct.
Now, what we're doing today, though, is going to talk about even in the selection of whether you're in the proper court, taxes might matter.
What do you mean proper court?
All right, so let's do that. So, all right, in this country, you can go to what we call state court, or federal court. Now, when you think of federal court, you might think of, well, I would go to federal court for a federal issue, a federal law issue, not a state law issue.
Okay.
But there's another way that you can go to court and a federal court, and that's something called diversity of citizenship.
Diversity of citizenship.
Yes. So what that would be is, let's say you and I, hypothetically, Gilbert, were citizens of different states. So I don't know. Let's just pick a state. Let's say I'm a citizen of Missouri, and I have a business, and let's say my business is an LLC, and I'm doing
Florida,
and I'm going to go to Florida and do business with you and your company or whatever. Now, let's say that in the course of our interactions, we enter into a construction loan. All right. Mm-hmm. And I make a loan to you and your company and your family with regard to a construction loan. Guarantee you have to guarantee the loan. I make it to your company, but because of personal guarantees, I am protected. I make a construction loan to you. So you understand what's going on?
Gotcha. Now,
let's assume that my LLC as such is a LLC in which I am somehow involved in a question about the status of the entity. I just want to be careful here with the facts of the particular case. I want to hit it quickly. What I'm looking at here is when we talk about diversity, we're pointing out that federal courts have limited jurisdiction. And in order to show diversity of citizenship, when you look at an LLC as a party, the courts will look through the LLC and make sure that the members are also citizens out of state. So what do I mean by that? Let's say that when I was describing to you an LLC making a construction loan, okay?
And let's explain what case are we talking?
Right. To? So I'm referring to a new case out of the Southern District of Florida. It's called USBCDC Investment Fund 180 LLC. It's a Missouri LLC that has sued a gentleman by the name of Daniel Vosotas, Vosotas.
Oh, wow.
And the case is out on September 25th, 2023, out of the Southern District.
Yeah, that's recent.
Yeah, that's very much so. And what the court was dealing with is a situation in which there's an allegation that there was a breach of a guarantee on a loan agreement, a construction loan, all right? And the construction loan was guaranteed allegedly by Mr. Vosotas, and he is the son of the defendant, Daniel Vosotas, I assume. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what also happens is that this LLC in Missouri, USBCDC, okay, files suit against the defendant, asserting breach of the guarantee because the borrower, which is an LLC, okay, Greystone Tenant LLC, and the son who guaranteed the debt to pay their debts, okay? So the defendant says, wait a minute, you can't sue us because Mr. Vosotas is a Florida resident, but he's also a member of the LLC, and the LLC, right, is Greystone Managing Member LLC, and that is the sole member of the plaintiff. Okay, so it's a complicated arrangement, but the long and short of it is that Greystone Managing Member, okay, is the LLC, is the sole member of USBCDC Investment Fund 180 LLC. Now, why is that important? So the structure of the plaintiff, who's a Missouri LLC that has another LLC as its sole member, allegedly, which is Greystone Managing Member, okay? And its sole member is Brandon Mull, a citizen of Texas. Got it?
Yeah.
All right. Now, so what we've got is a Missouri LLC whose owner is ostensibly a citizen of Texas.
Correct.
Who is suing a Florida citizen. Got it?
Wow.
All right. Now, what did I say about diversity of citizenship? So why do we have that? We allow, because if I was suing you in Florida and I'm from another state, the theory of diversity of citizenship is that I should be able to have some protection against home court advantage. And what that means is that instead of going into state court, if I can establish that we are absolutely from two different states, I can take that case that's otherwise a state-type case, state law issue, and bring it in federal court. And the theory is that federal courts would be less likely to be afflicted with home court advantage or something like that. Got it? So you might have reason to go to federal court for that. You might have other reasons, but the point being, Gilbert, that if we have citizens from two different states, and then you can go in federal court. But it's tricky when you're an LLC because you look through the LLC and look at its members. And all of the members, and not just the place where it's incorporated, have to all, or formed as in LLCs, have to all be non-citizens of the federal court, as against the other party in the court you're in. Got it? So let's say you're going to Florida federal court, right? And that's what happened here. The USBCDC Investment Fund with its sole member. All right, so let's go through this.
Let's simplify it more to the audience.
All right. So a plaintiff.
You're up here.
All right.
We're down here.
All right. So let's do it this way. Florida, a Missouri LLC.
Okay.
With a Texas, owned 100% by a Texas citizen, right? Wants to sue you, a Florida citizen,
correct,
and wants to go into federal court in the Southern District of Florida to do it. Got it?
Yeah.
All right. Real simple, right?
Yes.
That looks like diversity of citizenship because we don't have any issue there. However, remember what I was saying, that the plaintiff was alleging, hey, we're our whole owner, our sole member is another LLC, and that is wholly owned by a Texas citizen.
Interesting.
But here's the catch. Here's the catch.
There's a catch.
Yes. What happened is that the defendant, claims that diversity of citizenship did not exist because the defendant was a member of the plaintiff's managing member.
Oh, so they're both from the same.
So they're both. So now you have a Florida. So now you've got the defendant who's a Florida citizen claiming that the plaintiff has within its mix a Florida member. Therefore, you do not have diversity of citizenship, and you can kick the case out of federal court and go back to a home court advantage in a state court, assuming that's what you hope to happen.
And that would be which court of them?
Now, that would take you out of federal court in Florida, and you would still sue in state court in Florida.
Okay.
But you would not get this benefit of trying to go to the federal court under diversity of citizenship.
And what's the benefit of the diversity court?
Well, again, like I said, the theory of federal courts is that they're a little less likely to be subject to home court advantage, meaning that I sue you. I've never been to Florida. I don't know anything about Florida. I sue you, and you're a prominent member of Florida. You have the connections and so forth. It's not to suggest anything other than we want to give citizens of this country a sense that if they have a diversity of citizenship situation, they can opt into the federal court system as a way to insulate them from that concern.
To protect themselves?
Yeah, just from that concern. That was the theory. We've done it, and we've adhered to that over all these years.
But in this case, it's not.
Well, in this case, the plaintiff sues in federal court. You're the defendant. You're the guy I'm suing on a guarantee on a construction loan.
Yeah.
I'm saying you didn't pay, and you say you can't bring me into federal court because I own an interest in one of your members, that managing member entity. I'm a member of that, and therefore you don't have diversity of citizenship.
Okay.
All right. So you basically are looking at plaintiff and defendant. Is anyone in the mix in the same state? You can't have diversity of citizenship.
So
Got it?
Just a regular state court.
So this is kind of a front end matter in a lawsuit, right? You could see how this you get sued and you say, hey, let's dismiss the case because it's improper. They should not be suing in federal court, right? Because there's not diversity of citizenship. Now, here's where the taxes come in. There becomes a dispute in the jurisdiction over whether or not the defendant was still a member at the time of the lawsuit. So what do you think he shows to prove he's a member?
What?
Have you been listening, Gilbert? All these episodes. Do we have a letter?
K1?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Very good, Gilbert.
Wow.
So a K1.
See, I've been listening.
So he might say, look at my taxes, right? 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 I have reported income on my tax return under the terms of our agreement, and therefore I am reporting income that proves I'm a member.
Oh, wow.
So you come in with your taxes and show the court your taxes as part of this initial issue. You bring your taxes in and say, see, I'm reporting my share of income of the plaintiff. That proves I'm a member. That proves that there's not diversity of citizenship.
And then he comes in.
Yes. Plaintiff comes back and says, funny you say that. I have a K1 here that says your interest was reduced from 50% to 0. Game over. K1 says 0%. You ain't a member. We got diversity.
I see.
But guess what?
What?
The burden is on me as a plaintiff to prove that we have diversity of citizenship, to show that I'm in the proper court. And guess what? It's messy, right? Because you're coming to the court and saying, look, I have taxes that show that I'm still a member. We're both talking about the operating agreement and what it says or doesn't say about whether you're still a member, you were a member, you're not a member, right? Did you get kicked out or not? right? And I come in with the tax return and say, here's the K1 that proves he's no longer a member.
And then he comes back.
And he comes back and say, yeah, I know that's what the K1 says, but I have other evidence that I'm reporting it. There's no discussion of an 8082 that we've talked about.
And then the other guy comes back and say,
well, so then what happens is the court comes back and says, plaintiff, it's your burden, and you have not sufficiently alleged that the defendant is no longer a member of the entity, the managing member of the LLC. Okay?
Did they settle this
under
case,
the operating agreement, right?
Yeah.
Got it? And so one of the things that they say is the plaintiff has provided no evidence of the written approval it supposedly gave concerning the replacement of you as manager of that entity that's running the company. Got it? In other words, there was competing tax evidence, right? From both parties.
Yeah.
And a lack of evidence pointing to an ownership change that satisfied the court that it had subject matter jurisdiction. Meaning, if it's messy or there's competing evidence, you haven't proven that you belong in that court. So what are we saying? If you don't have everything tied down nice and neat and tight as to who your members are or who your members are not, and you go walking into a federal court claiming that you have diversity, you better make sure that in your messy situation, you don't have a member within your composition that is a citizen of the defendant state. Now here, the defendant was, involved with the plaintiff, but you can imagine a scenario where they have no dealings, but somewhere in my mix, I got a Florida member.
Correct.
In the scenario I talked about.
It could be, not related to
right.
him, but it could be somewhere else.
All right?
Yeah.
So here, so we have
messy.
taxes that have come into play, not on the issues before the court, had nothing to do with the construction loan, right? Had nothing to do with the lawsuit. IRS is not involved.
Yeah.
The issue is solely people trying to prove they are a member of an LLC.
So they have to.
So let's go back. Let me ask you.
Before,
so all right. So let's go back to a simpler issue. I say you and I are talking, and you say, Scott, I'm a member of the LLC, and I say, prove it. And you say, I have a K1, and I say, I don't agree with the K1. You say, yeah, but it says I'm a member, percentage. I say, no, that's just for taxes. I say, prove it. You say, isn't that enough? I say, show me some real paperwork. Show me an operating agreement that has your name on it. And let's say we don't have one.
So that's it. That settles it.
Well, how do you prove it?
And if you can't prove it?
What do you have? You have emails? You have a stock certificate or a membership certificate?
What if he has none of those?
Your word against mine.
And that's not going to work in court.
Maybe not. If I've got a K1 and I show the court all the K1s and you ain't got one, right? What are you going to do? You might say, well, I put it on my taxes. I didn't know about K1s, but I put the income down. We were 50-50 partners, and I guessed at the amount of income, and I put it down on my taxes.
So everything has to be organized and clear.
Correct.
Otherwise...
But think about the simple situation of...
Correct, yeah.
You claim to be part of an LLC with me, and I say to you, prove it. And you say, we just talked about it.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Why not?
Not in court.
Handshake. How about a handshake?
Yeah, maybe 100 years ago.
How about the articles of that you file with the state to get the entity formed? What happens if I'm on it but you're not?
What happened?
Does it say, what about the annual reports you file with the state? What happens if you don't, on those reports, you don't have to report anyone other than the manager? You don't have to list the members.
Is it enough?
Let's say you are listed on there.
Okay, so we do.
I'm just saying, what do you got to prove you are what you say you are?
Exactly.
And so in this situation of diversity, if that's going to matter as to citizenship, then the taxes may be in play. But as we're talking about, it's not the end of the story. It's part of the mix. Correct?
It's not final.
It's not final.
Yeah.
But we've cautioned our audience that if you don't have a K1, right, and you should have gotten one, you file an 8082 after requesting the K1, and vice versa. If you get a K1 and you don't believe you're a member, right, then you say, hey, you go back to them and say, I got a K1, I shouldn't have. I'm an employee, whatever, and or I'm no longer a member, and you ask them to rescind it or correct it and show that you're no longer a member? Or is it more complicated? We talked last episode about profits interest, and what is that? Is that a membership interest, right? And so it's just a lot there in it. And so we don't want our audience running around on the surface kind of just saying, I'm a member, and not having built that out, locked that down, protect themselves, and then be wary of the tax issues.
Confirmed and solid.
Exactly. And I want the audience to know that here's a case that shows that taxes are coming up in all kinds of places. And these issues of these K1s are coming up in these kinds of cases. So taxes touch everything. These tax forms that everybody glosses over and says, oh, whatever, they come up.
Yeah.
And it could be critical for you being able to go to the court you want to go to and prove that you are what you say you are, right? In terms of like diversity of citizenship based on the USBC DC investment
So the
fund
taxes,
case.
when they come up, they're not final for the case, but they could help in the in determining.
Yeah, I think the right rule of thumb here is that you want everything to tie down and make sense, but sometimes there's asymmetrical issues going on. In other words, it is possible that the taxes go one way and state law goes another. That's even more confusing.
Oh, God. As if it's not confusing as is.
But sometimes it might.
Yeah.
So therefore, you can't make knee-jerk reactions to this stuff. You can't fly around and guess, or you shouldn't. And so this gets us to the heart of it, which is these K1s, these tax forms are the beginning of the story, not the end.
Correct.
And when you
open part of the story.
Right. And when you open them up, there's a whole lot more to them than just a form with 3 things on it. You know what I mean? It's much more. And unfortunately, that's what we're dedicated to doing on these podcasts. Because what we're trying to get the word out is when you look under the hood, you start to really dig into these issues, you unpack all kinds of stuff. And therefore, you better know what you're doing with all of these, because each one has a lot of data in it, a lot of issues, a lot of things that can come up. You cannot just roll around and fly by the seat of your pants, or at least that's not ideal. I mean, I guess you can do that, but it's not advisable. And so what we prefer to do is have our audience say, oh, I get it. I get it. I want to go to the right court, and I'm an LLC, and I want to go to federal court. Do we have our ducks in a row? And I would suggest to you that if you have any kind of business matter, you're going to want your ducks in a row economically, because remember, discovery and everything can get into all these things, right? And then your taxes could come up in your discovery. So when you're all gung-ho about, I want to go to court, and then you get into discovery, when the discovery turns in and looks at everything you want to, you go to get discovery and you say, I want all the tax emails and everything and your taxes. Oh boy, right? Pretty invasive, right? That makes folks very uncomfortable just generally. And the courts are uncomfortable about looking at your tax forms and saying, they don't want to see the tax forms. Why? Because there's so much data in them. Is all of it relevant? Right? And it's got very private information. A lot of people file joint returns. And if you're the litigant, your spouse isn't, what's going on with your spouse shouldn't be coming into play. So why should the whole return with everything in it just go right into the court? Right?
Yeah.
So you just, the reality is taxes will come up in this litigation and all this stuff, but you got to know how to work those and understand how they come in and get good advice.
Yeah, get a good advice. Everyone, you heard Mr. T. Scott Tufts. If you want the right advice, the best advice about taxes, court, and to play it right, ask Mr. T. Scott Tufts at 877-647-7887. Again, that number is 877 and could be 407 as well, 647-7887. You can email him at stufts@pcc.law. That's stufts@pcc.law. And you can visit the website at privatecorporatecounsel.com. Thank you and have a wonderful day.